Good morning. Welcome to the August 13th, 2024 meeting of the Raleigh Planning Commission. Hope everyone enjoyed the break and you're all having a great summer. Chair Miller is out of town, so I'll be chairing the meeting in her absence. We begin each meeting with an opportunity for the public to comment on items not contained on the agenda. Is anyone here this morning who wishes to speak about an item not on today's agenda? Okay, if not, we'll move on to our agenda items. We have one item under old business and two under new business. We'll start with old business item C.1, rezoning Z1124, 1708 Lake Wheeler Road at the intersection of Centennial Parkway and Lake Wheeler Road. We last heard this item at our June 25th meeting, at which time a deferral was granted to allow the applicant to revise conditions. According to the information I have, Planning Commission can consider those changes if signed conditions were submitted by August 9th. I'll ask staff to provide an update on this case and let us know if those conditions were received by August 9th. Also, Commissioner McCrimmon isn't here. I was going to say she had asked to be recused, but she's not here, so I'll turn it over to staff. Thanks.
Good morning, Planning Commission. Matthew Burns with Planning and Development. Yes, we received signed conditions, revised conditions on August 9th, which provide two new conditions that I'll describe in more detail soon. Just as a reminder, this is about a 16-acre parcel that's owned by the state of North Carolina, who intend to sell it to Duke Energy, and sale is contingent on rezoning approval. And the proposed use is minor utilities as a electrical substation. Here's just a reminder of where the site is, location, and some nearby uses. So the first two conditions remain unchanged from June 25th, and they prohibit some uses normally allowed in OX and limit office uses to no more than 160,000 square feet. The first of the two new conditions would provide for, as part of a Tier 2 or Tier 3 site plan, either the application of a greenway easement over the existing trail that is currently not within an easement that connects the Centennial Bikeway connector to the Walnut Creek Greenway, or provide for the construction of a new greenway path, depending on site plan considerations, as Duke Energy is considering building out the site, which would also include it would be at least 10 feet wide within a 20-foot greenway easement to maintain that connection. The second of the new conditions would provide for, if requested and approved by the city of Raleigh, the property owner to dedicate a greenway easement between the Lake Wheeler Road sidewalk and the agreement connection described in the previous condition. And that's the informal goat path that we discussed last time, which is currently unpaved. It's just a dirt path. Just as a reminder, this request would increase residential, office, and retail entitlement, while industrial entitlement will go down. And you all had some questions last time about specific landscaping standards that are kind of described in the UDO, as well as some questions about tree conservation, so I wanted to go over those. So electrical substation is not included in the list of uses that is subject to additional landscaping standards or additional screening standards. The UDO has additional screening requirements for specific uses, equipment, and areas around a development site, which include things like utility service areas and mechanical equipment, but both of those refer to, they correspond to either utilities or utility systems that serve a typical building, such as like an apartment building, rather than a dedicated utilities use, like an electrical substation. As far as tree conservation, the UDO requires 10% in all districts other than R1 and R2. So OX would require a minimum 10% TCA. And as far as what types of tree conservation areas might apply to this site, Zone 2 of new riparian buffers, if y'all would remember, a considerable portion of the site is in floodplain. and also undisturbed areas adjoining a thoroughfare, and I believe that Lake Wheeler meets the definition of a thoroughfare per the UDO. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, consistent with the future land use map, and inconsistent with the urban form map due to the lack of a frontage. And I'll note that 2 of the policies that were formerly in the list of inconsistencies have been moved to the list of consistencies as the applicant has addressed greenway connectivity. Staff's identified no inconsistent policies with this request, and your deadline for action is August 24th. Park staff has indicated they are in support of condition number 3 and neutral on condition number 4, but they are here to answer any questions if you'd like to talk about the conditions with them. I'll also note that Amy Kraut couldn't be here today, but Toby Coleman is here to answer questions. And let me know if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Burns. So we received a full presentation from the applicant and heard from the public at our last meeting. Are any members of the public here who wish to speak on this case today? Okay, in that case, I'll bring it back to the table and ask commissioners if you have any questions for staff or the applicant. Okay, in that case, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, Commissioner Fox?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of Z1124. I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated August 13th, 2024, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning amendment.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? Commissioner Otwell has seconded. All in favor? Okay. All opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you. Moving to our second item, item D2 under new business. It's rezoning C2124 600 Grove Avenue, 601 and 609 Carolina Avenue. We'll now have a presentation from staff.
Good morning, Commission. Robert Tate, Planning and Development. This is rezoning request Z2124. So this is a request to rezone a collection of properties between Carolina and Grove Avenues. The request is to rezone, excuse me, 2.44 acres from residential 10 conditional use with the special residential parking overlay district to a general use for a residential 10 and retaining the same overlay district. Your deadline for action is October 12th. Zoning in the area is predominantly residential. Here you can see majority of the properties are R6 with some R10 at the site and closer to Western Boulevard. Here is a aerial of the surrounding land uses corresponding with the existing zoning, largely moderate scale residential and some commercial nodes along Western Boulevard. Here are a closer look at the site. You can see the site has a pretty healthy tree canopy, so does the surrounding area. Here's a closer look at the ground at a street view. The first image at the top right is on Grove Avenue looking northwest. This is looking into the site. This is a existing detached home. And on the bottom of the screen on the bottom right is an existing triplex along Carolina Avenue. So like I mentioned, this request is a general use case, which means there are no conditions provided. So here, the big difference between the existing and proposed zoning would be an increase in entitlement for residential units and also some changes to the setback. So the existing conditions require a 30 to 60 foot buffer from the properties to the south. The proposed zoning would essentially replace that with the R10 standards for setbacks. Overall, the site has a lower walk score than the citywide average, but has a higher bike and transit score and also a higher transportation cost index and job proximity than average. The site is served by two Go Raleigh routes, those being Route 27 Blue Ridge and Route 11L Buck Jones Connector. Here on the map, you can see a star that indicates a future BRT transit station at Powell Drive and Western Boulevard. And I would note there's an additional one that you can't quite see on this screen, kind of in this area here at Western and Buck Jones. Looking at affordability, this request would add to the housing supply, but does not include subsidized units. It would permit a variety of housing types, smaller units and smaller lots than the citywide average, and as previously mentioned, within walking distance of transit. Area residents are just as likely to be racial minorities and also just as likely to have low income compared to the citywide average. However, rent has increased in this area at 30.5% since 2016 compared to 25.5% in the citywide for the citywide average. So an R10 zoning district would be consistent with the moderate scale residential designation on the future land use map here. And although the request does not include a frontage, the lack of frontage is consistent with residential districts. So this request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, consistent with the future land use map and urban form map. Here are a list of consistent policies that largely relate to its relative location to transit and also increasing housing variety. And while there's a few inconsistent policies that largely speak to infill development and compatibility with surrounding structures. Your deadline for action is October 12th, and there are no outstanding issues. I'm here for any questions you may have for me.
Thank you, Mr. Tate, and I apologize. I realized I flipped the order of the items, but we'll just say that was intentional. We'll now hear from the applicant. The applicant and those in support have a total of 10 minutes.
Good morning. I'm Dwayne Williams with Williams General Contractors. We've owned this property since 2018. And first had an approval with City Council in September 2018 to do a larger density project there that was consistent with about 25 townhouses. We do not want to disturb the density of the tree line. We would just prefer to build some homes that are further back off the street. We do not want to clear cut the site. And so we are asking the city to just let us do R10 development there, which is mainly what you see up and down the street. What we've been approved to do with the R10 CU would really basically destroy the site. We had a great community meeting. There's a lot of new development up and down the street. Had a lot of new homeowners come and see us. If we do what originally was presented and approved by council for the zoning and the development, we would end up with a large site with a lot more density. And I know that we don't hear that a lot in Raleigh. I grew up here, went to state. I'm a Raleigh native, and we like the idea of being able to push some units back that are R10, have more parking off-street, in driveways, and in car, in garages. And so we're just trying to remove these conditions so that we can use the streets that are there and not have to clear cut this site. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We'll hold our questions for right now.
Okay.
Is there anyone else here to speak in support of this case? If not, we'll move to the opposition. All those in opposition have a total of 10 minutes. Okay, seeing no opposition, I'll bring it back to the table. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Commissioner Fox.
I'm recalling from the rezoning in around 2020, there was a lot of conversation about stormwater runoff. I was wondering for just relying on recent changes to the code, or there had been other considerations related to that?
We have Kevin Varnell of Stocks Engineering
Thank
to
you.
address that.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kevin Varnell with Stocks Engineering. On the stormwater, ultimately, both plans still provide a stormwater pond, stormwater control measure on the site. The latest version that we're proposing now actually has a lot less impervious areas on site, which will reduce that stormwater runoff. And part of the reason why we wanted to do this plan, the conditions that were originally agreed to were for a townhome development that had a lot of parking lots in the rear. So we were having to go in, clear cut, grade the entire site, remove a lot of older oak and hardwood trees, and just, it wasn't consistent with the neighborhood of what we were seeing. So what we're asking and proposing now is for a single-family duplex style subdivision that's got a stormwater pond in the back, just like the original plan, but we just don't have to go in and be so invasive with the vegetation and things that we're doing there. So that's what we're asking for.
Thank you.
Commissioner Peeler, did you have a question?
I was just looking at the rezoning from 2020, and I'm just curious if we had any notes or anything on why the conditions were set above and beyond the UDO in that case.
Would
Is there
staff
any-
like to answer that? I think there was a link.
So most of the conditions that were applied to the existing zoning were in response to neighborhood concerns and comments.
Got it.
Commissioner Raines, did I see your hand?
Yeah, that was one of my questions. If those were the comments back in 2020, I guess the applicant is saying they're hearing different comments today. I'm still concerned about some of these, elimination of some of these conditions in terms of impervious cover, 50% of the site. And then they also appear to request a prohibition on the apartment building type. Could you
Correct.
address those?
Yes, sir. We, to get the townhouse development approved originally, there were conditions surrounding having parking in the rear behind the buildings, which would have created a mass of parking on the roads. Our plan, if we get through the rezoning, would be to still build Barstow as part of our project. But then to be able to push the homes back and then have a larger path into the homes and away from the street. When we met with the community, that community has changed tremendously since I bought this property in 2017. And you got lots of new construction, you got lots of redevelopment of these homes and these pads in this property. But we just didn't see the need to just completely destroy the site. We think there's a better use for single-family homes and duplexes that are further back off the street, that keep the canopy and allow for these items. So we never plan on building apartments anyway. We had a conditional use to build 24 townhouses, 4 buildings, 6 each. But they would have been as close to the road as me to that TV. And so there was no way you weren't going to end up with just lots of cars on the streets. So the neighborhood was very supportive of something that had less impact and less density, if that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Commissioner
I'm going
Fox?
to follow up on one of your questions. Can staff remind me what the impervious coverage would be just by code?
Morning, Sean Eggleston with the Stormwater Division. There's 3 lots involved in the assemblage. 2 of them are of a size and age that they're more or less exempt from stormwater management, provided they're under 65% impervious coverage. The larger of the 3 is not subject to that code section. So basically, without that condition for the 50%, they could do whatever they want on the site as long as they appropriately manage the runoff, in accordance with our code.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner Fox?
Did, thank you.
Are there any other questions? So I wanted, I had a question, I guess, for stormwater. He left. Sorry. So is excuse me, is stormwater staff comfortable with removing the condition, the previous condition?
I don't know that we have a position on it.
Okay.
More or less pointing out that removing the condition would increase the allowable impervious surface on the lot, but we still do have a UDO that's got requirements on both water quality and quantity that, you know.
Okay. I have another question for, I guess, the applicant. The staff noted in the case that they were removing one of the conditions from the previous case could lead to some inconsistency in the built form, I guess, the built environment. Is the applicant interested in adding any type of condition that would make, I guess, what you build back consistent, maybe from a materials perspective, or they talked about the rooftops and that type of thing, just to be consistent with what's built there now?
Well, we, first of all, I don't want to speak with stormwater, but we're fairly certain with what our overlay looks like now for maybe 9 or 10 lots. We're not going to have near the impervious that the other plan had, and I'm sorry you don't have that here, but I was quite frankly surprised they allowed it in the middle of this neighborhood. But I see this around town everywhere now. And so, but I think with, single-family homes that will have residential roof pitches, a better single-family home environment, I think it's going to be less impervious anyway, but I don't want to speak for stormwater. But we are prepared to build what is consistent in the neighborhood, or what's being built consistent in the neighborhood. Kevin,
Do you know the specific condition that provided those inconsistencies?
I can find it in just a minute.
So some of the conditions were added really as just goodwill when the applicant originally came. We didn't really have a lot of neighborhood complaints. The biggest complaint was probably the parking on the street. And so that was one of the reasons why we put the internal parking back behind the townhomes. Originally, just you don't have room to provide enough parking in front of the townhomes in that case. What we're proposing now, again, going back to more of a single-family duplex style development, it allows us a lot more room to do those driveways and have the on-site parking just like we had proposed. But some of the other conditions, again, were goodwill, like the 50% impervious. We weren't really near that with what we had on site. And the proposed plan won't really change that. Won't actually get far better as far as that's concerned. And as far as stormwater runoff goes, we'll be required to meet pre versus post. So no matter what plan we choose, we'll still have to be less than the pre-development, on site. So whatever we release now will not increase that. So again, that's why the stormwater ponds are in place on both plans. It's just, it really won't change here. So some of the conditions, I think we would still be willing to agree to. It's just, it was easier to kind of take all of them off. The biggest one, I think, for us is the park, not allowing driveways off the street. That original condition was the biggest one that we have an issue with.
I think, as I'm looking at the staff report, I think that was more applicable if you were building back apartments, because it talks about the varying housing typologies, and it says overall consistency could be improved by proposing design characteristics that complement the surrounding built environment.
And we would have no problem adding that condition to no apartments back to this rezoning.
Okay.
To be honest, I'm not interested in restricting that, apartments, like in this proximity so close to future BRT stations.
Oh, I wasn't
Oh,
trying
okay.
to, no,
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to restrict apartments at all.
And I just wanted to make sure I understood. So per the staff comment related to stormwater, quantity and quality regulations have changed over the course of the past 4 years. So it is more restrictive now than perhaps it was previously. It's a question for staff.
detention requirements haven't changed. Recently, the water quality ones, the nutrient management strategy have, which
Okay.
I don't know that they're more restrictive, they're just different.
They're just
The way the
different.
state rules are
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Yep.
They're just additional. Thank you.
Different than they had been in the past as far as what requires treatment of what and where their off-site mitigation credits can be purchased and under which circumstances.
Can you, I'm sorry, I
Oh,
can't.
sorry. It just basically changed how you have to think about what surfaces are required to be treated prior to any off-site mitigation purchases or something like that. I don't know how to say whether it's more stringent than they used to be. They really are just different.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Commissioner Peeler?
Question for the applicant. You'd mentioned, I think at the beginning, keeping some of the canopy. I'm just curious what that looks like, with it being 2.4 acres, if that was all planning on getting clear cutted to build what you
Yeah,
need to build,
I
or
mean,
what that
it
looks
was
like.
unfortunate. We did, Mitchell Environmental did a study of, on the furthest down, there was a part of just a small, really just a runoff. But there's a part of the site we were leaving wooded anyway, because we didn't want to get anywhere near that, right, Kevin? So, but the rest of it, to put in these 24 units, was going to mean that we had to really take everything else off of it. And that was really unfortunate. And I've just watched the neighborhood change. If you know where the site is, you got companies like Build Raleigh that has done a lot of work over there. And these units that we're doing are similar to that, except what they were ended up with was they were buying single-family homes on infill lots, tearing those down. Joe Hodge, I think, did 3 units that were 30-foot wide each, very tight. But because this was a piece of property we bought from a gentleman who went to NC State, we knew him, we knew the family, and it's wooded. The reason it was wooded is because he lived there since the 1960s. And his back neighbor, Mr. Ball, and I got acquainted, and he was retired and lived in Greensboro. So that's how we ended up with the complete square. It made sense to build Barstow, because I think that helps the city with connectivity through there. But there seems to be a large push to do more density in this neighborhood. And I know that at the time, they had us take a building off the pad. We had 24 that, from the site that we had proposed to the city council as a working plan. But now I understand that they would even allow more density. We're just not interested in that. Again, we're just a hometown builder. We'd like to go in there and take and lay the units in the tree line. So I've been doing this for 30 years, but I don't clear cut a site. I'll have our engineers go in there and look at the hardwoods and say, okay, we can meet the setbacks, and this needs to go back another 10 feet so that George Ellis and our crew doesn't have to go in there with a grader. We'll push that house back and bring this one forward. We really want it to look like it belongs to the community. And I understand that's not always the most productive thing as a developer. You just get a guy in a backhoe and he just tears everything down, but I'm just not interested in that. And that's made us very successful. And so we'll go in there and look at that tree line and look at the development of Barstow with the city and look at where these hardwoods are. And there are 100-year-old trees in there. And say, where can we place these houses off of the street to allow people to come up their driveway, to have more green space, and to protect this tree line? You saw the aerial. You don't want to see it next time where most of it's gone. And so I know it's a strange request, because what I probably should do is go work for more density and then go find a developer from Maryland and sell the whole thing. I mean, truly. I'm getting crazy offers already because of your R10CU. But if I go back and run this back up the flagpole with the increased density, I think Robert said to you, and meet those conditions, and I can go in there and get 35 units, I got a multitude of people who will buy this site from me and go in there and just tear it all to pieces. Again, I grew up in Raleigh. I understand the neighborhood. I want to do something that makes sense for the community. And that's what we would do with it. So if that makes sense, Mr. Peeler, I think that's what we're trying to do. Kind of odd, isn't it?
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner O'Haver?
Yes, thank you. And maybe this is just the holiday fog for being out for a month. but I'm trying to wrap my head around, I understand that condition 4 previously limited impervious to 50%. I think I understand from staff, now it's 65% just under the general zoning if we don't provide any conditions. And I appreciate the applicant's comment about saving the tree canopy, but it seems counterintuitive to me that the applicant's talking about less density, but we're increasing the impervious versus maintaining 50% when we're talking about doing less density. So I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. And I think just generally, this commission has been supportive of density. So I'm not saying I want to put density in here. I'm just saying if the applicant desires less density, why are we increasing the impervious area? I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. So maybe the applicant can respond to that.
Again, I think the developer will be happy to add that condition or keep that condition if you'd like to.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Fox?
Yeah, I have to be honest, without adding any conditions to it, I'm not, so just looking at it as base zoning, I'm not finding any inconsistencies. So although this is an unusual case, as you noted, I would be comfortable supporting it as it is, just as a base zoning request without conditions.
Any other thoughts from the commissioners?
I agree that this looks like a appropriate request for the area, according to the comp plan.
Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion. And I guess if we can see if we're okay with it as it is, or if we'd like to send it back to the applicant for revised conditions. Yes, Commissioner Fox.
So I'd like to recommend approval of Z2124. I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated August 13, 2024, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning amendment.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Commissioner Otwell has seconded. All in favor? 5. All opposed? That passes 5-2. Commissioners O'Haver and Peeler, would you like to state why you're opposed?
Absolutely, sure. I want to make it clear again, I'm not opposed to the development. I find it counterintuitive. I think the applicant was willing to at least go back and look at limiting the impervious, which I think is important to the community, especially when we're pushing for density. This is going to be less dense. So I support it. I appreciate y'all being willing to look at that. So I'm glad it passes, but I'm just going to have to recommend denial.
Yeah, I also don't have a problem with that. I just think if the city spent time on the rezoning just 4 years ago and got that increased condition, I'd like to see it kept in there if the applicant was willing to do that.
Thank you. Okay, bear with me. We will move back now to case D1, which was Comprehensive Plan Amendment CP 224, 4700 Kyle Drive. This is a city-initiated rezoning, and we'll hear from staff at this time.
Good morning, Brown and Reedus, Planning and Development. Comprehensive Plan Amendment CP 224, again, is a city-initiated request to remove a proposed neighborhood street where it is shown intersecting with 4700 Kyle Drive on the street plan map in the comprehensive plan. This address is the site of the future Kyle Drive Park, which is going to be a City of Raleigh park. Your deadline for action is November 11th. Here's a look at the Kyle Drive property, and you can see where that proposed neighborhood street is extending through the property. It's that green dotted line. The site is located just north of the Windward Downs neighborhood. Here's a look at the kind of existing environmental features that are on the site. So the Beaver Dam Creek extends through that northern portion of the site, and you can see the flood hazard areas and flood-prone soils that are mapped there today. So again, just looking at that proposed change, this is what it would look like if it were approved today on the street plan map. The proposed change is to remove that neighborhood street dotted line where it is intersecting with the property. Because the Kyle Drive property is kind of nestled within existing neighborhoods, there's existing residential streets that are built out, providing that east-west movement that the proposed street is trying to accomplish. So you can see the redundancy that's already built in with that east-west movement, which kind of reduces the need for that proposed neighborhood street. And so the Kyle Drive Park Master Plan is still in its draft form. It is currently under review and going to the City Council for public hearing on August 20th for hopeful adoption. And so here is a look at that draft master plan, and we have Parks and Rec staff here today if you have any additional questions about that master plan. There are a number of consistent policies associated with this request, mostly having to do with natural resource protection and especially protection of natural water features. And there are some inconsistent policies flagged, especially eliminating gaps and then road connectivity. So there are no outstanding issues. Again, your deadline for action is November 11th. You've got August 27th, September 10th, and September 24th coming up. I'm happy to answer any questions you have for staff.
Thank you. Since the city is the applicant, we've had the applicant presentation. We'll move to public comment. Is there anyone here to speak in support of this amendment? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this amendment? Okay, thank you. I'll bring it back to the table for commissioner questions and comments. Commissioner Fox?
Question for park staff. Just want to make sure I'm reading that plan correctly. It looks like there's an internal circulation network which would provide the ability for a walker or a biker to be able to traverse that. Is that correct?
We are providing a greenway trail and some natural surface trails to connect to all of the southern street stubs that come into the park.
Okay. Then I have no issue with this.
Commissioner Raines?
Just a question about the sequence, just my knowledge. So the city council and public have to yet hear this draft for the plan for the park. If we approve this and the recommendations are contrary to that, what is the city's process for handling that difference? I'm not saying there's going to be a difference, but
You mean if you guys recommend approval of the comp plan amendment and council doesn't approve the park master plan?
right.
The council could then deny the comp plan amendment when it comes to public hearing. The master plan is sort of a construction master plan. It's not a comp plan master plan type thing. So they're just looking at the proposed development of the park on the 20th and may act on that. If they do to approve it, then this comp plan would need to proceed because they're not building that road.
Perfect.
And so, but if they altered the master plan before they approved it, then it would depend on how it was altered as to whether they would act on this. But your recommendation doesn't interfere with their review and approval of the master plan for the park.
Thanks for clarifying that. I have no objections to this case, and I'm excited for this future park.
Thank you, Commissioner Raines. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, I will entertain a motion. Commissioner Fox?
Just go, I have it open. I'd like to recommend approval of Comprehensive Plan Amendment CP 224 as it is reasonable and in the public interest. It removes a connection which there are redundant connections in the area which would achieve the goal.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Raines has seconded. All of those in favor? All opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Next up is item E1, approval of the June 25th, 2024 Draft Planning Commission meeting minutes. Do we have any comments for Shanita for the minutes? I think I had one. I'm trying to pull it up. There's a lot of pressure doing this. Lots of. Give me just a second. It was just one small thing, Shanita. On page 4, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraph that starts with Ms. Bennett. That second sentence says Ms. Miller also spoke. It was still me talking. So that whole paragraph is me. So I just don't want Chair Miller to have to answer for something I said. So. And then on page 5, me again, 1, 2, 3, the 4th paragraph where it says Ms. Fox made original motion adding note that council consider the affordability policy. Because I saw the council meeting where they talked about this and they had a whole bunch of questions, I want to make sure we're really clear here about what I said. And it was that they review the affordability policy to make sure it's effectively incentivizing affordable housing. Does anyone else have any edits? Okay. If not, then I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes with those revisions. Commissioner Fox, you're on a roll.
I know. Motion to approve with the edits recommended by Acting Chair Bennett.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Littman has seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, next we go to report from the chair. The chair's not here. Report from the members. On the subcommittee table, the committee of the whole just needs to be updated. It still says Commissioner Raines. And speaking of committee of the whole, we'll be meeting on August 22nd at 4 p.m. Can I get a check for anyone who cannot attend? August 22nd at 4. That's next Thursday. So all of us can be there. Yes, committee of the whole.
I'm not available on the 22nd at 4.
Okay. Haver, but everyone else is good for that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We should have. Okay, great. Thank you. We'll just move down the line.
All right. I cannot tell you the date of the next text change committee meeting off the top of my head. I'm trying to pull it up right now.
August 21st at 1.
August 21st at 1?
Is that the new time?
Right. Oh, it's in the director's report.
1 o'clock.
Wednesday, next week at 1.
But is
All right.
1 o'clock the new standard time? I have it down as 4. Are we going to be meeting at 1 o'clock regularly? Is that the new schedule?
We will discuss. We have
The situation there, and I know you had a special meeting back before the break, that I think you met at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
So if you want to meet at 4, just say you're going to meet at 4.
Let's meet at 4.
And that will,
We're
yeah.
going to meet at 4. That would be better. Oh, yeah, let's meet at 4. We're going to amend this, and we have 2 items on the agenda, the Water Departmental Handbook and the Temporary and Accessory Emergency Shelter text changes.
Do you just want to, now the assignments have kind of changed, go make sure your new committee will be able to be there?
Yes, so on this new committee, we have Commissioners Lampman, O'Haver, Peeler, and Raines. And so could we get a check for that 4 p.m. meeting? Wonderful.
I'm sorry, which day?
August 21st.
So text change on the 21st at 4, Committee of the Whole on the 22nd at 4, 2 days of 4 in a row for text change committee members.
Okay. Seems like we're good.
Excellent, thank you.
Commissioner Raines?
Concludes my report.
I am the new chair for the Infrastructure and Mobility Committee. We do not have any discussion items for the month of August. That's all I got.
Commissioner Fox?
Strategic Planning Committee, which is now made up of members Bennett, Mann, McCrimmon, and Miller, has a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. That is the 14th at 3 p.m. in RMB 303. We will be completing our conversation about NCOD topics.
Are you anticipating a quorum? Do you know?
I don't know, I was just going to ask. Might we have a quorum of those members who are present? Maybe none of them are.
Well, yes, you and Ms. Bennett are the only ones here.
I'm here.
So I didn't know
here.
if you had spoken with Miller, Mann, or McCrimmon.
I will be coming in hot, very hot,
Yeah.
but I'll be there.
Yeah. I do anticipate at least one of those other members. However, what I can do is confer offline and get back to you.
Commissioner Lampman?
I have no updates. I just sent a notification that I will be out the 27th.
Okay. Commissioner O'Haver?
Thank you. I have a few, actually. I wanted to go back to the removal of the dotted line on the street plan.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
And 100% that removal makes sense. I just, from my experience, as much of a reason to remove it, but a list, because we've got influential people here and I'm on public record. So both meetings, I'm out
You've
for a
just done it.
few
Thank
months.
you.
Okay, thank you. And then I wanted to thank Bynum and Mr. York and staff for the agenda today for slow walking us back in after a holiday. That was great. Thank you very much.
I also would like to thank y'all for the agenda. No other report.
Okay, thank you for that. Then we'll move to the report from the Assistant Director.
There are some errors in the report. I apologize. The committee list at the beginning of the report is correct. In the important place, we got it right. And then I wanted to, not in my written report, but I had a request from Go Raleigh to ask you if someone would like to be a liaison for the commission to the Wake Transit Plan update process that's happening. So that advisory group will be meeting quarterly. Anticipated that the meetings would be 1 to 2 hours quarterly over the next 12 months. If you are interested in serving as a liaison, they will meet next in September. So just mull on that, talk it over among yourselves, and maybe communicate your interest to Ms. Miller, and Chair Miller, and she can circle back with me. Okay?
That's it? Well, then that, is there anything else from the commissioners? Nothing. Well then, all hearts and minds are at peace.
Good job, Nicole.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Have a great day, everybody.